Hello everyone, welcome back. So in today's video, we'll be diving into quantitative risk analysis. Now don't let the fancy terms scare you. We'll break it down in under 5 minutes so you'll have a solid understanding of how this works and why it's so useful for managing the risks. So let's get started. So what exactly is quantitative risk analysis? Well, unlike qualitative risk analysis, which is more perception based, quantitative risk analysis gives you concrete numbers. Think probabilities, dollar values, and concrete data. It's all about putting price tag on the risk so we can calculate things like what's the potential loss, how often could a risk occur, how much will countermeasure cost, and most importantly, it helps us to make more informed decisions by putting everything in a numeric perspective. The process of quantitative risk analysis starts with two main things: asset valuation and threat identification. Once we know the value of our asset and the risks we are facing, we can start calculating more detailed numbers. Here are the major steps involved. Inventory your assets and assign a value to them. Research possible threats to each asset. Creating what's called as asset threat pair. For each asset threat pairing, calculate the exposure factor, which shows what percentage of assets could be lost if the risk happens. Calculate the single loss expectancy, which tells you the potential loss for a single incident. Calculate annualized rate of occurrence. In other words, how often do we expect this threat to happen in a year? From there, we get annualized loss expectancy. This tells us the total expected loss for the year for that threat. Next, we research countermeasures to reduce these risks and calculate how they affect the ARO, EF, and ALE. Finally, we perform a cost-benefit analysis to pick most effective countermeasures for each threat. Let's break down a couple of these terms to make them more clear. First up, exposure factor. This is the percentage loss you'd experience if a specific threat hits an asset. If your asset is a computer worth 100K and it has a 30% exposure factor, that means you could lose 30,000 if a fire destroys it. Next, we have symbol loss expectancy. This tells you the potential dollar loss for a single event. For example, if your asset is valued at 200K and exposure factor is 45%, the SLE would be 90,000. So you would lose 90,000 if that specific threat occurs. Now we calculate annualized rate of occurrence. Basically, how often you expect this threat to happen in a year. If the ARO of a power outage is 0.5, that means you expect it to happen once every 2 years. The annualized loss expectancy that combines the SLE and ARO to estimate your total annual loss from specific threat. So if your SLE for a power outage is 90,000 and the ARO is 0.5, the ALE would be 45,000. But if you are dealing with something like a compromised user account with an ARO of 15, the ALE would shoot up to 1.35 million. That's a huge difference. As you can see, quantitative risk analysis gives us specific numbers that help us understand the financial impact of different risks, making it easier to prioritize and manage them. Now, doing all of these calculations by hand might sound overwhelming, and it could be, but don't worry. There are software tools that automate most of this process. These tools can create asset inventories, pull in predefined AROs, and generate risk analysis reports that make everything more manageable. So to wrap up, quantitative risk analysis is a super useful method when you need to understand the financial side of risk. It helps you put a dollar value on a potential losses and countermeasures, making it easier to make informed decisions. If you're dealing with a significant asset or a complex threat, this method is key for minimizing risks and protecting your organization. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button below and subscribe for more such videos. Thank you.